problem. I'll start that so I don't forget. Okay, here they come. If I hit admit all. You have magic, Sarah? Awesome. I'm just I've got Jeremy's session starting in the other room.
Just going to tell her we could hear her. Okay, everybody is streaming in here. We have 56 folks. I believe that the number before we started was around 90-ish. So I'm going to wait till we hit 65, then I'm going to start because we have a pretty tight, not tight schedule, but I want to make sure there's time for questions and comments and stuff at the end. So I am 70, start, which I think should be a second. Cool. We're going to start. All right. My name is Jeremy Williams. I am a registered therapeutic counselor and a Canadian certified addictions counselor. I'm also the managing director of Mountainside Counseling and Family Wellness Vancouver. And I am a person with lived experience with mental health and addiction. And I also am a person with lived experience with neurodiversity, including ADHD and ASD. Before we start, I want to do a land acknowledgement. I'm going to be doing a national land acknowledgement since we're here from all over Canada today. So I recognize and acknowledge that I live, work, and learn on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the First Peoples. From coast to coast to coast, I acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of all the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people of these lands. I thank the diverse Indigenous peoples whose footsteps have marked this territory for centuries and pay my respects to their elders, past, present, and emerging. So we are here today to talk about supporting your neurodiverse clients. I had a chance to quickly check in on the poll answers before we came in here, and we have a range all the way from I don't really know anything all the way up to I am absolutely versed in this topic. So in the original outline, there's a 5-minute break. We're going to scrap that break, as that break is usually for when I'm teaching in colleges or in larger groups. So I usually throw a 5-minute break in between, but since everybody seems to be cool with working through the straight 90 minutes, we're going to go ahead and do that. And also, before I quickly start, I will mention that there's no slides, there's no handouts. No. Adjust your mic because it's causing feedback. I know. I think that should be better. I don't know if anybody's gonna thumbs up. Is that better? Okay, perfect. Woo, a whole wave of thumbs. Awesome. So like I said, this particular workshop, there are no slides, there are no handouts. If you want to take notes yourself, please do so. This workshop is designed as sort of experiential in the sense that this workshop is designed in the way that I would design a workshop for individuals who are neurodiverse. So that's kind of one of the cool parts about this. So we're going to start off with a video. That's how this is going to work. We're going to do video, have a bit of talk, video, have a bit of talk, and at the end, there's going to be the section where I talk about how to support your neurodiverse clients and talk about different modalities and different ways to support them. And then we're going to open it up for the Ask a Neurodiverse Person, anything you've ever wanted to ask a neurodiverse person, or anything about the content that we talked about. So I'm going to go ahead and start us off with our first video. Here we go.
In this video, I'm going to talk about what is neurodiversity and why it's important to understand about neurodiversity, and if you are someone who is neurodiverse. So first off, what is neurodiversity? I didn't hear about this term until I actually was in medical school, and growing up with ADHD and dyslexia, I had a professor that told me about this, and I was like, really? There is such thing as a tribe that, groups themselves as neurodiversity. So what neurodiversity is, we know from brain scans and looking at different kids and different people that have different learning, different learning and different tactics that they do. And we want to look at it as a disability or something that's abnormal. There's something wrong with us. And this is a term that Judy Singer actually came up with, she actually has autism and she's a professor. And basically the concept is, instead of looking at people who have learning disabilities and there's something wrong with them, is that it's more about differences. So having learning differences, of learning things differently than the neurotypical type of person. And the whole idea about neurodiversity is a group of people that do learn differently and not looking at it as a deficit. So who is considered neurodiverse? Well, the people who are considered neurodiverse would be people who have ADHD, people who are on the autism spectrum, people who have dyslexia, dyspraxia, or other learning disabilities. But in the neurodiversity, the push for this is basically that we have learning differences, that we learn things differently than the neurotypical person, and that it makes us more normal versus being some weird alien, that just because we learn differently and we have challenges in normal society when it comes to learning in school or going at work in a corporation or being amongst other people who are neurotypical, is that we just learn differently versus just, okay, we have a deficit and so there's something wrong with us. Now, the big stigma around people who are neurodiverse is they want to look at us that we are abnormal. So how can we change this stigma? Well, it really is helping and educating people, and it's starting to show in science. They're looking that, yeah, we learn differently. It isn't necessarily that we have a deficit. And in any cases, it can look like a deficit because of how things are structured in the school system, how things are structured in the workforce, and it makes it difficult for us people who are neurodiverse to actually fit in. But when we actually apply, when we understand that we do learn differently, and then the people that we work with understand that we learn differently, we can really shine and make a huge difference in this world and being interrupters in the system and look at someone as per se normal, because there's plenty of us that are neurodiverse. We just learn differently. It doesn't mean we necessarily have a deficit or are just abnormal from the rest of everybody else. So how can it be changed within school? Well, we need to really educate people, and there is schools that are starting to apply more of ways of applying learning differently. Not necessarily always the same structured system of sitting in class, listening to the teacher, and not moving. They're starting to apply these in, special schools, or at least, private schools. It'd be nice to push this towards, and this is a movement that this neurodiversity is to push this movement to really educate schools to help people who are neurodiverse to actually teach different ways of learning versus just the standard way, because we learn differently. It isn't necessarily a deficit, it's just we learn differently. And then of course within the workforce, trying to help, corporations and bosses and people in the workforce to understand that people in the neurodiversity in that tribe We learn differently, but we definitely can contribute a lot in corporations, and really in a lot of cases can make a huge impact on businesses. But they need to understand that we don't typically do things the standard way. We actually learn things differently, but we also do tasks and we do different projects differently in a different way. And instead of trying to push us to do the standard way of doing things, let us be creative and think outside the box to actually have something better than just the typical stuff. And if we can educate more businesses and they get on the trend of this, then us neurodiverse people can really shine in all aspects versus try to be nudged into this common society that they're trying to push us to do when it doesn't work for us because, again, going back, we just learn different. Not necessarily deficit, but we learn different. But I look at it as a great tribe to be part of, being part of the neurodiversity tribe that I'm part of, having ADHD. I'm actually proud of having ADHD because I am different, I learn differently, and therefore I'm able to contribute into society in a different way than just the standard normal people. Okay. Now you might be wondering, okay, am I part of this cool tribe of neurodiversity? And you want to know if you do have ADHD or not, or if you have other if you are in those learning disabilities. Well, check out this video right here where I talk about different ways of understanding if you have ADHD or not, or, and learning about the differences there. So watch this playlist right here and I'll see you guys in the inside.
Great. So that's our first video to kind of about neurodiversity there. So one of the things that I would say that you're going to encounter when you work with neurodiverse clients, and I know that the word neurodivergent is also used in this in the field as well. I choose to use neurodiverse because it's more inclusive and I feel it's less stigmatizing. Divergent means other. Divergent means I don't know. I personally just don't find that word very very trauma informed or very client centered. So I use the word neurodiverse. So when you have neurodiverse clients that are coming in, and what I wrote down here is, you're going to have clients who are going to come in with generally more questions and answers. You're going to have clients coming in questioning why they do the things they do, why nobody understands them, why they have such low self-esteem. Why do I, it's the why. And we're going to get into this at the end about in more depth about how you can support your neurodiverse clients. But really, when you are working with someone who's coming in for neurodiversity, generally the first thing you're going to be dealing with is the educational aspect first. You are going to be, across from a person who is coming to you not just for help, but they're going to need answers. They're going to need skills and tools and exercises that are going to help them figure out the limitations and also figure out the realities of what they're suffering from or what they're dealing with before you can really get into the deep emotional stuff around that. So that's what I would say too. And one thing about that video too is I like the fact that they talk about this as being a difference rather than a deficit. I think that's also extremely empowering for individuals when they can come in and hear, no, it's not, you just learn differently. And, the school systems here, work sites, they're not set up to support neurodiverse folks. And it's not coming from a place not coming from a place of deficit, but a place of difference. And again, that's also very empowering for a client to hear if they've never heard that from somebody before. And then in the aspect of, school or the workplace, the other great thing about that video too is that individuals with neurodiversity are generally more creative. They think outside the box, and with just minimal accommodation for learning or working, you have these individuals who are able to see things from a completely different aspect or from in a different way, and be able to sort of bring out ideas, thoughts, or questions that other people may not have access to, may not have that sort of that imagination that can definitely come with individuals who are neurodiverse. One thing I will also say that is quite, it might seem like a a non-issue, is there's this idea that individuals use the word superpower when it comes to individuals with ADHD, ASD, and they'll say, oh, you've got superpowers, right? I get that, right? You want to be encouraging. You want to also help individuals who, you want to help encourage them, bring their self-esteem up, make them feel empowered. But I will say that that's kind of a statement to make maybe once you've got to know your client, because a lot of people don't see their ADHD as a superpower at the very beginning or ever, right? So just be careful about that. It's the kind of the new buzzword that individuals are using lately, and it's quite split right down the middle about if that's helpful or not very helpful whatsoever. So again, we're going to get into a bit later about more in depth on how to support. The next thing we are going to talk about here, and if you could see my setup, you see I have 3 devices going all at once, is we're going to talk about I would say the most common neurodiversity people are generally have some insight to have heard of, which is ADHD. I do want to mention that we will not be talking about dyslexia or dyspraxia in this session, just because they are more they're more specialized. And usually if it's someone with dyslexia or dyspraxia, there are therapists and counselors who specialize in that area, because it's such a sort of niche, and it deserves its own topic. So I won't even touch on that today, so that we can focus on the ones that we're going to talk about today. So the next one we're going to look at is our good old pal ADHD. I'm sure that quite a lot of us have heard of ADHD. I know that we have 77 people here. I'm going to assume that there is, you don't need to identify yourself. There's probably at least one person besides me in this room who identifies as having ADHD, just by sheer numbers. So you're going to take a look at that video right now. We'll come back. There we go. I already see an I do.
I took medication when I was a kid. Everyone said I would outgrow it, so I stopped taking the medication in college. Everything is so hard now.
I hate math. It's so boring. I know I'm bad at it, even though my teacher says I'm not.
I'm a failure. I can't remember to do homework, I lose things, I can't get anything right.
I hate feeling like I'm different, but I really am. Work seems like it's easy for everyone else.
These are the voices of people with attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, or ADHD. Millions of American children, teenagers, and adults experience this disorder, which makes it hard to concentrate, pay attention, organize, and focus. Their lives are complicated because of it. I know. One of these voices is mine. I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was 9. Most kids with ADHD start to struggle with symptoms even earlier than that. I first noticed my symptoms in school when we began doing projects that took planning, and I got frustrated a lot. Later in middle school, I was on the basketball team, but I was always late to practice. Eventually, my teacher called my parents to talk about my grades, since I understood the material, but didn't turn things in on time. At that point, my parents, my coach, and my teacher all compared how things were going. And that's when my parents took me to see my pediatrician. ADHD can show up in 3 different types: inattentive, hyperactive impulsive, and combined. My symptoms were more of the inattentive type. I was having a lot of trouble losing things or forgetting things, not finishing homework, and organizing my work for projects and future assignments. My parents told me at first that they wondered if I had a hearing problem, because sometimes I would look like I didn't hear them when they talked to me. Other children also struggle to keep their attention in class, can look super distracted at home and school, and have trouble with details for things they're not interested in. Kids with more hyperactive or impulsive symptoms have trouble waiting for their turn. They might get up from their seats in class, run around when it's not a good time to do that, talk all the time, interrupt people, or blurt out answers. A lot of times, kids with ADHD can get into trouble, since the symptoms can look like they don't care or aren't respectful of others. But they do care. They just can't control it because of their problem with attention. While some people might have inattentive type and others have hyperactive impulsive type ADHD, still others might have symptoms of both, which is called combined type. If people show 6 symptoms from either of the first 2 types, or a combination of them adding to 6, they fit the diagnosis. While ADHD is most commonly diagnosed in kids, almost all of them continue to experience it as teenagers, and a majority still have symptoms as adults. Only some people grow out of it. The most important thing to know is that treatment for ADHD works. For little kids, this is behavior therapy that also includes their parents, so the whole family can be part of the solution. For school-aged kids and older, the best choice is medication or a combination of medication and therapy. I had behavior therapy where I learned some skills, like specific time management and organization techniques, that helped me in school and in my sport. I also took a stimulant medication that helped me focus my attention. Sometimes people find great help in non-stimulant medications, especially younger kids. For most people, ADHD medications really help focus and block out distractions. ADHD is a serious challenge for kids, teenagers, and adults who struggle to pay attention and focus in many parts of their lives. But there is hope. Treatment works. School wasn't easy for me, but with my therapy and medication, I learned what I needed to do to make it work. People go on to do well in school and succeed in their lives and careers, in spite of and because of their ADHD. I know. I did.
So there we go with that one. Again, these videos are, this is in no way going to be the most intensive, deep, robust, dive into neurodiversity, because we only have 90 minutes, and I could have spent 90 minutes on any one of the 3 neurodiversities I'm going to talk about today. So this is generally, geared again in a way that we're going to briefly go over these, and at the end I'm going to go over. I have a whole list of different interventions and ways of doing things that that work with neurodiverse clients. It's going to be no shock to anybody in the room when I say that 3 of the most common the add-ons, basically, that individuals with ADHD come into therapy with are self-esteem, depression, and anxiety. Now, if you take away self-esteem, I basically call it the trifecta of ADHD, depression, and anxiety. There are much higher instances of those two things when individuals have ADHD. And absolutely, you're going to be working with individuals who are going to need a lot of support around self-esteem, and to a lesser degree, but also as important, I would say, guilt and shame. One of the things that video talked about too is medications that help. I come from a stance of zero stigma around medication, if that's what works for my clients. In fact, for ADHD, I will often not encourage, but I will often let my clients know about the different options. Now, working in a, we're here at an addictions national conference. So the great thing about ADHD medicine in the present is that there are currently 2 non-stimulant medications that can be prescribed for ADHD. If you have clients who have a history of substance abuse with stimulants or other prescriptions, or they just don't want to take the chance by introducing a stimulant. Those are, I'm going to break from tradition here, and I'm going to type them out. So guanfacine Strattera. I spelled it Starterra, but Strattera. If you want to write those two down, you can look that up. Guanfacine and Strattera are great for ADHD. Wellbutrin also does have some positive effect on ADHD, which also helps with depression and anxiety. So it's actually a really good, alternative to guanfacine or Strattera if you can't get them. We will. No, because we're not going to get a chance to talk about that. So basically, I'll give you a quick little thing. ADHD also comes with this lovely, lovely little friend called rejection sensitivity dysphoria. This is mostly attributed to ADHD, and rejection sensitivity dysphoria is an acquired. You generally can't have RSD unless you have something else that helps to manifest it. So in this case, ADHD. Rejection sensitivity dysphoria is an adverse reaction to any kind of rejection, any kind of real or even perceived rejection, not being included in something. Someone not talking to you quite the same way as they usually do can set off this dysphoria that is not only affects the mind, but it really affects the body. It really enacts the fight or flight system, and that brings in with it this frenetic energy when you have a rejection sensitivity dysphoria that that heightens these feelings of, again, rejection and uninclusion and not being liked. Again, I won't get into too specifics on this. It kind of sits beside and kind of sometimes can mirror or mask as why can't I pull this name? This is the ADHD moment. EPD. EPD is borderline personality disorder. There we go. I pulled it out. It fell in the hole on my head there. So those two can look fairly similar. But the pathology of them and the treatment for those are slightly different. And what I will say is that when it comes to rejection sensitivity dysphoria, it's really hard to treat with any sort of standard interventions that we might use in our practice. The main treatment for rejection sensitivity dysphoria is guanfacine. Guanfacine is a blood pressure medication that hits the brain in a way that it reduces the physical effects of rejection sensitivity dysphoria, so that when these moments happen, your clients are able to contain themselves and hold these larger emotions because of the regulation that it offers without jumping into the fight or flight state. So I'll leave that part at that. Spelling of the last guanfacine or Strattera. It's in the chat. Yeah, so guanfacine or Strattera. It's in the chat. You'll find it if you scroll back up. I personally, and I don't mind divulging this to a group of we're in a safe space here, as a person with ADHD, depression, anxiety, and RSD, I'm speaking also from a place of personal knowledge. I take Wellbutrin, I take guanfacine, I take, and I also take escitalopram for the anxiety. Those three medications for me, have absolutely changed, have been a massive game changer when I came into recovery almost 7 years ago. Yeah, and again, we're not prescribers, so I won't get too much into those. But for me, those have actually been absolute lifesavers for me in my ability to, maintain my recovery, to heal from past traumas and from the experience of living with these realities up until the age of 40, unmedicated, untreated. And that, again, is also another reason why I'm very anti-stigma when it comes to medication. I find medication is part of harm reduction, and for me, harm reduction is meeting people where they're at and not judging the path that they want to take, as long as it's a healthy choice for them. And then the last thing that I will say is that ADHD, and I'm very mindful of, as a non-binary person, I'm very mindful of gender when I say this. So I will use this in a sort of a medical sense when we're talking about physiologically male or female bodies. It shows up differently. ADHD shows up differently in physiological bodies. So for what we would typically consider a, again, we're talking in physiologically a woman. It presents as inattentivity. It presents as, again, that the narrator was saying they had a hearing test because people didn't think she could hear properly. It's more of the inattentive. For, again, physiologically male bodies, male makeup, it's more on the hyperactive side. The acting out, the joking around, the stimming, the fidgeting, all of those definitely fall into that category. And then, like they said, there's combined. That is me. I have my energetic days and I have my inattentive days, based off of, I really wish I could tell. I can't tell you why it happens. It's just how it works. So, and again, we'll get into this afterwards, but just as a quick kind of bullet point here, absolutely, skills, time management, planning, are some of the most helpful ways that you can help an individual with ADHD learn to, or help them to learn to, and I won't even say change, or I won't even say stop their ADHD, learning how to work with it, learning how to harness it in a way that is less impactful. You'll never get completely rid of it, and there's no point in pushing yourself and driving yourself up against a wall trying to stop all of these things. I do hear that, Sheldon, when you're coming through the Hoova app, the audio is often stuttered. I apologize for that. There's nothing on my end that I can do about it, but I was in previous sessions and had that issue too. So, and then again, we are going to get into some more in-depth stuff on that. And if everybody wants to look at the chat, I am going to put the name of a content creator that I would love for you to all check out. His name is Connor DeWolf. He is probably the most hilarious, effective, I see Christine knows who that is. He's the most hilarious, effective, and relatable content creator on the internet that deals with specifically ADHD and neurodiversity. His videos are short, they are insightful, they are funny, but they also are extremely educational and extremely impacting, especially if you're somebody who has ADHD. You can learn so much from this guy. I mean, I'm a counselor. I have neurodiversity and ADHD, and I'm constantly, I guess I would say, learning and just recognizing things through him that I'm just like, that is so me, right? And those moments are powerful. Those moments are normalizing. Those moments are like that breath out that you're like, okay, I am not alone in this. Like, there are so many other people that go through this and have these things happen. It was a game changer for me. So that is our good friend, again, Connor DeWolf. He is in there. Check him out. Give him to clients. If you work with individuals who have neurodiversity and ADHD. The other thing too is that you might find individuals who are like, oh, I'm just going to go on medication and I'm going to be good. Cool. It might diminish the impact that it has in the moment moving forward. It might help the person to focus more, to relax more, to engage more. But that does not fix, the years and years and years of bad coping skills of loss and grief, and embarrassment and shame and anxiety and depression that come with this. So again, we'll get into that a little bit later at the end, and then we're going to have like a question period. But again, we're doing the broad overview here, and I was worried that I wouldn't see anybody scribbling anything down, but from the screen that I have, I see heads looking down and writing. So my stress level has dropped down 5 points. So this is fantastic. Thank you. We're going to go to the next video, and that one we're going to talk about ASD, or autism spectrum disorder. This is always an interesting one. So we're going to go to that one.
Hello, I'm Dr. Meg Stone Heberlin, a licensed clinical psychologist at Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center, and you're probably wondering, what is autism? Well, a quick explanation is that autism spectrum disorder, or autism for short, is a term that describes a variety of developmental differences in social interaction, communication, and behavior. The autism spectrum represents a diverse group of people with various skills and interests. For example, some people with autism can speak fluently, while others may have difficulty communicating. Some people with autism might communicate using pictures or devices. Research suggests that autism develops from a combination of genetic and environmental influences. These influences increase the risk that a child may have autism. Factors that may increase a person's risk for autism include family history of autism, advanced parental age, pregnancy and birth complications, and pregnancies spaced less than 1 year apart. However, keep in mind that risk is not the same as known cause, and there is no known cause for autism. Diagnosis comes from a medical doctor or psychologist after evaluating a child's developmental history, social interaction, behavior, social communication skills, and developmental or intellectual skills. Direct assessment and caregiver report are both important components of comprehensive autism evaluations. Autism can be detected as young as 18 months of age. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends routine early screening by each child's primary care doctor because early detection and intervention lead to improved outcomes. Autism symptoms can vary from one person to the next and may present as difficulties in the following areas: speech and nonverbal communication, making eye contact, understanding facial expressions or other people's feelings, playing or engaging interactively with peers, initiating pretend or imaginary play, sensory processing, including sensitivities to sounds, touch, or movement, flexibility, and adjusting to changes in routine. For example, some individuals with autism show a strong preference for routine or repetitive behaviors, or a tendency to hyper-focus on topics of interest. People with autism also have many strengths that are unique to each person, but might include learning and remembering facts, events, and stories, visual problem solving, like doing math problems, puzzles, and figuring out how things work, following routines and schedules, thinking about the world from a different perspective, leading to innovative and creative ideas or solutions to problems. The 3 most common myths about autism are: people with autism don't feel empathy or emotions. This is not true. In fact, people with autism have empathy, emotions, and feelings. They may just have a harder time showing their feelings or will demonstrate their emotions differently. Another myth is that people with autism can't handle change. That's not true either. The reality is, predictable routines and structure help all people feel safe and comfortable. Change can cause anxiety for anyone. People with autism may be more likely to perseverate or get stuck when something unexpected happens. Preparation, planning ahead, and time to adjust are 3 easy tools that can help people with autism cope with change. And the last one is people with autism are not interested in having friends. Nope, that's not right. Children and adults with autism are often very interested in interacting with their communities and making friends. Just like everyone else, people with autism have a wide variety of interests and talents, and particularly enjoy connecting with others with similar experiences and interests. So remember, autism affects the development of social interaction, communication, and behavior. No 2 individuals with autism are alike. People with autism have different strengths and challenges, just like all people. This is why it's called autism spectrum disorder. Some factors that may increase the risk of autism have been identified through research. Just because a factor has been associated with an increased risk of autism does not mean that it causes autism. More research is needed to understand the causes of autism. People with autism have many strengths and view the world from a different perspective, adding rich diversity to our world. For more information, go to cincinnatichildrens.org and search for autism. A message from Cincinnati Children's.
So time cut out. Again, audio is out of my hands. It's the Mova app sometimes, again, like I said, stutters.
Jeremy, can I pop in for a second?
Yeah, you can.
So, hi, everybody. You're the only session with an audio issue, and it's actually fine on the WOVA end. WOVA did a quick check, and it actually looks like some of you are having connectivity issues. They can actually see the connectivity issue. So if you're having audio issues, my best advice to you is turn your camera off at this point, which will give you greater bandwidth. And it will allow you to hear the audio at a more clear point. I do not know what this line is beside me. Does everyone see this crazy white line? Like, do I have a giant orb beside me? What is going on? So go ahead and I don't know what's happening. Go ahead and turn your video off if you're having audio issues. That's fine. We note that everyone's here. I did, as a note, pop into someone 10 minutes before I came here, and they were asleep at their desk, completely dead asleep, snoring with their head down. So if you're really super tired and I pop up on your screen, shut your camera off if you're going to go to sleep. Don't actually do that. But if you are exhausted, please by all means take a break. And we're here to support that. So yeah, shut your camera off, see if it works, and we'll go from there. I apologize. I'm not sure why your session's having such issues, but we will try again. Oh, someone says my spirit guide is right here. I don't know what's happening, friends. Like I don't understand. But here we are.
Your
Okay.
spirit guide and your emotional support person.
Yes, my Jeremy is my emotional support human in life. So I'm having a day. Okay. Have a great session. I'm going to stick
Thank
around
you,
because it's
Crystal.
super interesting. Bye.
Thank you very much. So, autism spectrum disorder, right? Again,
Jeremy, sorry, there's a question if you want to, I don't know if you want to, there's
can you
where
tell
to
me what
go?
the question is?
Eve had a question, I believe it was. Let me find him.
Yeah, hi. Just a quick question. For those of us that have been having audio issues, would it be possible to get links for the videos so we could watch them on our own time?
Yeah, I can put them in at the end. I'll put the links in.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's no problem. Cool. Okay. So the main thing about ASD and neurodiversity is, again, it is yes, it's considered a autism spectrum disorder, attention deficit disorder. Again, the languaging around that is changing, and again, instead of it being more of a deficit, it's a difference, right? And again, this is a more empowering word. This is a more inclusive word. This is a word that helps individuals feel less stigmatized when you tell them there's nothing wrong with you, you just learn differently. That can be a huge boost for them, and maybe even a way of thinking that never occurred to them in the past was when you hear the word disorder, and you're living that experience of, again, feeling less than, feeling, I'll speak from my own experience, feeling stupid, feeling like I know I'm intelligent, but why can't I get this? What is wrong with me? And so I just kind of want to put that out there first. And the interesting thing about ASD, like they said, it is, it affects social interaction, communication, and behavior. And the more interesting thing that I found out was the sort of scientific statistics that they had on it, which was that it's a combination of, again, genetics and environmental factors, including family history, the age of the mother, and having pregnancies very close together. Now, I don't know it personally. I don't know what that means. I don't know that, I'm not a scientist. I'm just a helper. But if you look at it again, as far as genetics and environmental factors, it could fall in, either of those, all of those could fall into either one of those two things. And the other thing I kind of want to point out too is when it comes to ASD, think about 10, 15 years ago on television when we used to talk about autism. And think about the types of portrayals that we saw of autistic people. It was either the, what they used to call the savant, who was in their own world. They could do one thing, like play the piano or do math, right? So they were monolith up on that. Oh, they're really good at one thing. Then we had the other portrayals of individuals with autism, who were the ones who were, I'm trying to think of a good word, the ones who were, the ones who were violent and reactive, or you couldn't go near them or touch them, and they had headphones on, and they wouldn't look at anybody. And again, a monolith, a hyperbole of the autistic community. These days, we have much better representations of individuals who have autism. We have well, I mean, myself, right? I can pass. I can walk around this world, and I can engage with individuals. I can do my work. I can go to school. I can learn. I can do all these different things, and pass. And that's through, again, education. That's through therapy. That's through skills and education around that. That where I am, high functioning, I guess, very high functioning. My ASD has generally been more towards, I would say, sort of sensory issues, boundary issues, and maybe a little bit on the really at a younger age being way off in the imaginary play world, right? Which will come into play at the end when we talk about how to support your clients through that. So I think that's one of the main things, again, to when we're talking about autism spectrum disorder. It is not a deficit, it's a difference. It comes in all different shapes and sizes. And again, if someone is coming to you and they have ASD, or they suspect they have ASD, and they're coming to you on their own, you're probably not going to deal with individuals who are nonverbal or who are severely impacted by their ASD. Generally, that population would go to more specialized programs, specialized services. But you're going to get those individuals who are on the mid to high level. And as with neurodiversity, ADHD, ASD, and then we're going to talk about OCD in a second, the more you know about the basics of these of the spectrum, the more that you're going to be able to help them learn as well. And we'll get to a bit about that as so. The next thing we are going to talk about, the last sort of neurodiversity we're going to talk about that we will definitely deal with in our practices, whether or not it's addiction or not. I know this is addiction centered for this conference. Everything I'm saying works with addiction, works with individual. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at what is OCD.
No matter what I tried, the thoughts kept coming. I had horrible thoughts about hurting my fiance. The only thing that made them go away was counting by tens.
I knew I unplugged my curling iron every morning. I was positive I did. But as soon as I got out the door, the thoughts started. Thoughts that I left it on and that it would start a fire. I had to go back and check, again and again.
My apartment building has a speed bump on the way out. Every time I drove over it, I was terrified I ran someone over. I had to turn around, get out, and check. I never got out of my parking lot.
Every public surface I touched felt full of germs. The only way I'd feel better was to wash my hands. I did it 20 times a day sometimes even more.
These are the voices of obsessive compulsive disorder, or OCD. OCD is a serious condition that causes great distress and really impacts people's lives. People become overwhelmed by their thoughts and anxiety and feel like hostages to the rituals that help take away that anxiety. I know. One of these voices is mine. People with OCD experience obsessions, which are specific thoughts that are intense and intrusive. People don't choose to have them, and they're often very distressing. Obsessions make it hard to concentrate or get anything done. A lot of times, these thoughts are about germs or safety, but they could be about anything, really. In my case, it was my curling iron. If you asked me, I would tell you I know I unplugged it. I remember doing it. But the thoughts that I didn't were so strong, telling me I left it on. It was so scary, and it made me feel unsafe, like my house might burn down, all because of my curling iron. The second symptom of OCD is compulsions. These are ritual behaviors, and people with OCD do them to help deal with the anxiety, horror, or distress they feel because of their obsessive thoughts. There are many types of compulsive behaviors, but they often focus on washing or cleaning, checking on things for safety, or repeating words or numbers. In my case, I had to check on that curling iron. I came back to my house, went upstairs, saw it was unplugged, left again for work, and then I would repeat it all over again. It was really tough for me to get to work on any given day. I knew I didn't need to do this at all, but it felt totally out of control. There's good news. OCD is treatable. Several types of treatment are effective, and people with OCD can overcome their obsessive thoughts and ritual behaviors that have controlled their lives. Cognitive behavioral therapy, or CBT, is the most effective treatment. In CBT, people work hard to challenge their thoughts and change the behaviors that follow. There is a specific type of CBT that is used just for those of us with OCD. It's called Exposure and Response Prevention, or ERP, and it works to help us delay or resist ritual compulsions and cope with the resulting anxiety in a different manner. Over time, the anxiety becomes less disruptive and can even disappear. In addition, many people find relief from a specific medication that helps with getting those obsessive thoughts under control. Several SSRIs are used with OCD, and they really make a difference for a lot of people. A combination of ERP and medication is often the best choice for many people. It was for me. The medication took the edge off my anxiety, and my thoughts about the curling iron got a lot less distressing. In therapy, I learned how to postpone going back to check on it. It was so hard at first, but my therapist guided me in doing this, and I learned to get through the anxiety. Eventually, I proved to myself I could do it. Obsessive-compulsive disorder really changes people's lives, often causing them to feel like the disturbing thoughts and rituals have power over them. But with evidence-based treatment, it doesn't have to be that way. People can learn to challenge their thoughts and manage their behavior. They can take control of their lives again. I know. I did.
Awesome. So that is that's the last video we're going to watch, just so you know. So what are some of these sort of specific realities of OCD? So like we learned in the video there, OCD shows up as intrusive thoughts, repetitive activities. These activities can often become very isolating, can cause individuals to feel trapped, frozen, or almost like a slave to their compulsions. One of the things that they talked about is this is one of the neurodiversities that has definitely more of a proven track record of how to work with and treat for best results. And like they said, cognitive behavioral therapy is one of the best ways to work through with OCD, as well as, like they said, ERP, or exposure response prevention. As the video said, that is either that's taking somebody through the repetitive motion and just sort of getting them to wait an extra 5 seconds, and then an extra 10 seconds, and then an extra 15 seconds. It can be as small as that before they act on or react to or physically put something in motion to act on their compulsion. I'll give you a great example of one of my clients who, again, anxiety, depression, ADHD, the trifecta. And this client had never had any issues with OCD before, but she then started developing a repetitive behavior around the stove being left on. It is a gas stove, which is very visible that you can see if it's on or off. This client would check the stove every morning before she left for work. Check it, sometimes get to the door, go back and check it again, get to work, worry about it all day, or even go home at lunchtime to recheck. This is a new behavior for this client. It had never really manifested in other ways before to this extent. So we came up with a great alternative. I don't know if this would, for me, necessarily fall under exposure response prevention, but we came up with a workaround. The workaround in this case was every morning when you check the stove, take a photo of it. Right? Stand back, take a photo of all the areas that you would come home and check so that you have a visual representation of the stove that day. So if you feel the impulse to go home, or you feel the impulse that you haven't checked your stove, open your phone, look at the photo. I'm not a genius, I'm not a magician, but with this particular client, it absolutely worked like a charm. I would say that in this particular case, within about a week, that particular behavior, that particular obsession was completely, I would say successfully, there you go, that's a good word, was successfully intervened by taking that photo, to the point where after a couple of weeks, she no longer needed to take that photo anymore. She built up that trust. She built up that internal currency around, yes, I can trust what I remember, I can trust what I saw, and I don't have to trust what the emotional part of my brain is running rampant and telling me. I can use the analytical side of my brain with that photo and counteract. So in that particular case, that was how that was successful. The one thing I do want to kind of point out, though, with OCD, there are similarities between some things that individuals with ASD and ADHD do that can mimic, or I would say mimic, appear to be, or sometimes turn into OCD traits. So you will find that individuals with ASD and ADHD will often do what's called stimming, right? So stimming is a repetitive gesture or repetitive sort of, I don't know how to, so stimming could be, for an ADHD person, could be sitting and just doing this while they're sitting, right? It builds dopamine because it's a repetitive action, but it also creates safety, and it also channels sort of like nervous energy. Stimming could also be, you ever had that person in your class who taps their pen? Also a form, yeah, you can hear it, right? That's also a form of stimming. The other cool part is some people have like vocal stim. Some people will just be like, will hum out of nowhere, or they will repeat words and say it in a different way each time, just to get that little bit of stimulation from it. The other thing that can also show up between ASD and ADHD that could mimic OCD is also I would say like being hyper focused on things. So individuals with ADHD are often very, very prone to, I would say, to like hyper obsession over a new skill, a new area of interest. You will find that individuals, I would say, with moderate to sort of severe ADHD will generally have at least a good, 12 to 24 different little projects around the house they started, never finished. Or 1 week they were into macrame, the next week they were into collaging, the next week they were into birdhouses, the next week they were into, it can go on and on and on. And that hyperfixation, that hyperfocus is a form of getting that dopamine that the brain craves especially in the ADHD brain. But they also bring safety and they also bring comfort. Those repetitive actions, it builds a sense of, again, safety, a sense of calm, and a sense of, or an avenue to sort of scratch that curiosity and scratch that sort of out of the box thinking in a way that, again, sort of soothes or activates the ADHD or ASD mind. And again, much like, unlike RSD, which is rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which is kind of take the medication and just work on the ADHD and hope that that kind of helps. I do have one thing, hopefully we have time, I'm going to try to really quickly teach everybody a technique at the very end. Yeah, I'm just going to, I'll cut that one right there because I want to make sure that I have about 5 minutes to get to the thing that I wanted to show everybody. So this brings us to the part where we are going to talk about how to support your neurodiverse clients. Awesome. So when it comes to, like I alluded to at the beginning, and we have half an hour left, which is good. We're going to have time now. Is the idea that when you're working with individuals who have neurodiversity, you are working with individuals who are going to come in with that, why do I do this? Why, right? That's going to be the major question. Like, why do I act this way? Why do people not want to talk to me? Why do I have low self-esteem? It's going to be a lot of why questions. And education and normalization are going to be very, very key for individuals who come in with neurodiversity. I would, there are a lot of great, I would say starter 101 PDFs that you can buy from different places on the internet that work with neurodiversity. There is one that I use, which is called Managing Your Adult ADHD Workbook. Just the name of that in the Managing Your Adult ADHD Workbook. I use that for myself. I also give that to my clients. To sort of go through on their own time and kind of pull out things that they want to, that they see themselves in, that they might want to work with. And it also has a section in the one, I'll bring it up. I'll show you the cover of it. So when you go look for it, you'll recognize it. There is also a section in it that also speaks to the family members or people who support the person with, in this case, ADHD, right? So in this particular case, it's got stuff for the practitioner, it's got stuff for the client, it's got stuff for the people who are supporting that person. That's a very particular one that I would use for ADHD. So, like I said, it's up to, if you want to really take on clients like this with neurodiversity, you're going to have to do a base amount of education and training for yourself. You don't have to be an expert. You just need to have, the basic skills and tools to identify like the, the neuroscience or the whys, right? And there's, I could, unfortunately, with only an hour and a half, again, I could make that one whole topic. But again, as as you know, as learners, as individuals who are, you know, every year we're taking trainings, we're taking courses, we're building our capacity. If this is how you want to, if you want to work with neurodiverse clients, this is where you can build your capacities. Just learning the basics of neurodiversity, ADHD, OCD, ADHD, OCD, ASD, and again, a bit about RSD, just so that clients know that there's help available for that side of things, especially with the RSD. I have only ever had one client who knew what rejection sensitivity dysphoria was before they came into see me. It is, I would say, it's newer than the rest, and the treatment around it and the science around it is growing. But it is such a difficult thing to pin down that the guanfacine or the Strattera, but mainly the guanfacine, are absolute. Sorry, I take that back. Strattera is just for ADHD. The guanfacine and the other one is, it'll come to me, Klonopin, is the other one that you can use for rejection sensitivity dysphoria. They're both heart medications. They both bring down blood pressure. So if your client has low blood pressure, probably not an option for them. But those two are blood pressure medications that interact with the brain in a way that reduces the physical sensation to rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which then allows you to work with the other modalities you're working with that not impeding things. So I'm going to run down a list. You can, I'll go slowly so you can use your pens to write this down. What are some of the modalities and ways that we can work with individuals who have ADHD or neurodiversity? Again, the first one is education. Education for you and education for your neurodiverse client. And then even, I put psychoeducation as well, because there is sort of the overview, but then if you could really get into the nitty-gritty about neuroscience and plasticity and the dopamine in the brain, and you can get that little bit of extra psychoeducation in there too, that adds that extra layer of support and help. Family systems is also another approach when we're working with neurodiverse clients, as these are generally, like they said, neurodiversity is generally something that is a combination of factors, including, but not limited to, genetics. So in a family systems model, if you can go back and identify other people, parents, uncles, grandparents, cousins who have similarities to that, again, normalizing helps you feel like, okay, it's not just me, it's part of a thread, part of a chain of people. Narrative therapy. And the reason why narrative therapy, and again, these modalities are based off of what has worked for me as a practitioner and what has worked for me as the person on the other side of the practitioner. So I'm coming from sort of both angles on this. Narrative therapy, when you have individuals who have neurodiversity, they're going to have generally a very negative story about themselves. It's not going to be a very positive story. Oh, I was this and no one liked me and I struggled, and that it's a very, very, very self-deprecating, very sort of heavy narrative that individuals with neurodiversity have about themselves. So again, with the education and the modalities we're going to use, being able to take them back at a certain point and reframe that story as the survivor, as the resilient person, as the as the strong individual it took to make it through, really helps to change that narrative that those individuals will say about themselves. Guilt and shame and self-esteem, super, super, super important for that one too. You're going to have individuals who have constantly had loss, who have constantly been teased, constantly had loss of friends, loss of confidence, being left out, being ostracized, being made to feel less than. and you're going to have those, you know, those negative core values that are going to be running around in these individuals' minds, that are not helpful, are not in any way, you know, kind or empowering for them. Then I kind of, as addictions counselors, I'm sure we are all fairly well versed in what I call the addictions trifecta, which is strength-based, motivational, and solution-focused. For obvious reasons, when you're working with individuals who are neurodiverse, you're going to want to have them lean on their strengths and reapply them to other areas. You're going to want to, you know, you're going to want to introduce them in a way that makes them feel empowered, motivates them to get things done. And you're definitely going to want to come into the solution-focused, in with the solution-focused approach at some point too, just for the fact, again, why, right? We're looking for answers when it comes to neurodiversity. Yes, we're looking to support the person in their journey and their emotions and their feelings, but this is going to be very heavy, if not 50-50 on the, you know, the talk therapy slash education and all the other things I've been talking about. And then the last part, but definitely not the least, I would say this is almost one of the most important ones, is wellness wheel, which goes into self-care, and then scheduling and timekeeping. So I kind of put those all kind of in the life skills, round. And schedule and timing, definitely more for ADHD, or scheduling and planning. It can't hurt with the other ones as well, to get that sort of, you know, if you're going to be working on skills, tools, techniques, if you're going to be working on doing wellness wheels, working on self-care, you're going to want to be able to slot those in, time those in, and get that basic, because I'll tell you right now, individuals, especially with ADHD and ASD, have things, you know, have issues with proper hygiene, with keeping a house clean, with you know, what a very common one is like brushing teeth. Not only is it something that individuals forget to do, it literally becomes this monumental task to get it done. Simply because of, and I will kind of throw this out there as a general term, especially with ADHD, there's this term called ADHD paralysis, and it is a moderate to severe form of the executive functioning that we all have. Some people are really good at starting something. In ADHD, and even with ASD, the idea of getting up to do the dishes isn't just stand up, do dishes, put them away. It's stand up, walk over, turn the tap on, get the soap, get the sponge. It's the list of things that need to be done are exponential and overwhelming. And there's, last but not least, there's no dopamine in it. And that's what the ADHD brain really craves and lacks, is where's the dopamine? Follow the dopamine. So if there's no dopamine involved and it's this chore and it's been sitting there for a few days, it becomes Mount Everest, right? And only planning, smart goals, scheduling are going to be able to kind of hone that in. We have 15 minutes left. So I'm going to ask everybody, I'm going to give an option. No, I don't know how to do this. Basically, we have two things. I can go to question and answer right now, or I can also teach you a quick self-soothing skill that you can use for individuals to kind of calm themselves and be able to hold bigger emotions. What do we? So raise your hand if you want to go to. Okay, I see skill, teach, self-soothing. Okay, cool. Okay, the skill is a thing. So this is what I want to teach everybody really quickly, and this is what's called. Oh, sorry, my My Google just heard me and said she didn't understand. So what we're going to do is, this is what's called a soothing self-touch exercise that is going to allow us to teach our clients how to sort of self-regulate and come to a more calm place and come to a more place where we can pull bigger emotions. So what I want everybody to do really quickly is I want you to take your right hand and I want you to place it on your heart. And while you're doing that, this is how you would teach it. So you put your hand on your heart, and the first thing that you start to do, let's say you're feeling anxious, right? So you put your hand on your heart for the first 30 seconds to a minute. You just imagine, eyes open or closed, that you are not breathing through your lungs, but you're breathing through your heart. And you kind of just picture that in your mind, that every breath you take in is going into your heart and out of your heart. And you do that for about 30 seconds to a minute, just to sort of set the stage. And then what you do is, the first thing you do is acceptance of what's happening. You look at yourself, you say to yourself, if you're alone, you can say it out loud, or in your head, you can say, okay, I notice that I'm feeling anxiety. This is where I'm feeling it in my body. This is not comfortable. This is not something, this is a, an unwanted moment, and just accepting the reality of the situation with self-talk. And that you can go on for a minute or two, just sort of, yeah, this sucks. This is anxiety. This is what it's doing to me. This is how it's affecting me. This is how I, this is what it is. And again, still breathing in and out of the heart through this, imagining that. Then you get to the commitment section of this, which is, once you've accepted it, then you continue to do that self-talk, which is, now that I've accepted this, I'm going to sit here quietly, and I'm going to allow this feeling to exist. I'm not going to fight it. I'm going to, I'm going to entertain it. I'm going to talk with it. I'm going to see if there's something I need to learn. I'm going to see if there's a message. I'm going to see if there's something that I'm not doing or something that I am doing. I'm simply just going to let this feeling exist, and I'm not going to fight it, and I'm going to embrace it. And you do that, and you talk yourself through that. And again, still breathing in and out of your heart. Now, that's the simple mode. If everybody takes their right hand off for a second, push your left hand over top like an X, curl your fingers of your left hand over, put it back on your heart. So when you do this, can everybody feel how you have more leverage, push harder on your chest if you want to, right? You're also going to have your elbows now tucked at your side. So what you want to do is if it's really bad, and you really need that extra support, you're going to want to clasp your hands like that and just lightly hug yourself with your elbows into your rib cage, or at the top of your rib cage. And again, going through the exact same path, which is breathing in and out of the heart, doing the acceptance part. I'm noticing I'm having this feeling. This is why I feel it in my body. This is what it's doing to me. This is the reality of it. Moving into the commitment side of that, which is, now that I recognize this, I'm going to sit with this. I'm going to hold it. I'm going to give it space until it passes. And even though soothing self-talk, that security talk, which is, this cannot hurt me. My thoughts cannot hurt me. And breathing in and out again through the heart while you're doing this the whole time, until that feeling either leaves or gets to a point where you are able to ground yourself or bring yourself back down to at least your window of tolerance, where you can then move through. Really quickly, does anybody notice any difference in their sort of mood after just doing that as a practice? Raise your hand if you felt anything different. Okay, so some of you have already felt something different about this, and this is I'm going to give you the science behind this now, which I kept back for a very good reason. So for a specific reason, this is the cool thing. So when you have your hand on your heart and you are breathing through your head in and out of your heart, what you're actually doing is you're syncing up your heart and your brain waves, right? You're never going to get them fully synced up. They're never going to beat or pulse in the sync, but you're syncing them up because you're focused on your heart, and your heart and your brain both have electricity, right? And you're bringing those more into bringing that more into alignment. You're bringing those waves into sync, right? So what happens when our heart rate goes down? What happens when those go into sync? Well, we start to enact the parasympathetic nervous system, right? And that's the one that brings us comfort. That's the one that soothes us. That's the one that makes us feel safe. The parasympathetic system is the one that activates when we are cuddled up with the person we love, or we get a hug from a trusted person, or a mother breastfeeding a child. That creates that activates that parasympathetic nervous system and brings all of our nervous system, all of our the activity in the nervous system down, reduces our heart rate, releases oxytocin, releases serotonin in small amounts, and starts to calm us down, right? That's the first part of the science. Second part of the science is the touch. So what happens when you bang your elbow into something? What's the first thing you do? Ow, right? You grab it and you put your hand on it. Whatever it is that you bumped, automatically put your hand on it, because that is soothing self-touch. That is actually therapeutic. When you have that soothing self-touch, whether it's because you hurt yourself or because you're scared or nervous. Geneva says bad words. So do I, but I'm not going to do that in this. What that does is, again, that starts to enact the parasympathetic nervous system. Your brain knows that it's you, right? But your brain and your body run on different systems. So your brain knows that it's you doing it, but your body just feels the therapeutic touch, the self-soothing touch. It's the same as if, it's not as powerful, but it's the same as if, another person comes and, gives you a hug to relax. It's the same as if, and I'm just gonna say it, it's the same thing as when a kid bumps their head and mom gives you a kiss, right? The magic of a mom's touch, the magic of a mother's kiss, that is that soothing touch that comes from another person and activates the parasympathetic. Now, when we put our hands over top of each other and we tucked our elbows in, what were we doing? We were giving ourselves a hug as well at the same time. So not only did we have more pressure on our heart, we also had pressure on the side, which again is like getting that hug from somebody else, right? Scientifically proven that if you receive a hug from somebody that lasts more than 30 seconds, it becomes medicinal. It activates the parasympathetic. It releases oxytocin. It releases serotonin, all those feel-good chemicals. The parasympathetic activates, and you just you feel really, really good. And that's what that's all about. Your body cannot tell the difference. Your body can't tell the difference when you're doing the touch. Your brain can, but your brain's off doing other things. And the reason why this is, again, a really great exercise for individuals who are neurodiverse is because a lot of neurodiverse folks are going to have dysregulation or problems regulating themselves or problems holding big emotions. So when you go through modalities with them, when you're talking about their anxiety, their stress, especially with the anxiety, depression and anxiety go hand in hand with neurodiversity. This is also a really great way of, again, sitting with those feelings, self-soothing, self-regulating, and again, the biggest part is building that capacity to hold bigger emotions and hold bigger feelings so that you can do the work of the learning and you can do the work of the therapy with the practitioner. So I think I pretty much exhausted what I wanted to talk about, and we have a few minutes left, so I would love to open it up for anybody who has any questions, whether it's about practice, whether it's about anything about me personally. If you want to know Anything about a neurodiverse person, put your hands up and we will get through to you. Oh, somebody wants to see the cover of the ADHD workbook. Yes, I will do that while anybody thinks of questions.
I don't see any hands up yet in the participant area. I'm just checking the chat to see if there's anything that
I will get
yeah,
to
people are just
Annabelle. I
asking that
see
you
one
post
hand.
the
Annabelle
links.
has their hand up. I'll get to you in 1 sec. I just want to show the booklet. So this is the booklet, Mastering Your Adult ADHD, a cognitive behavioral treatment program. That's the one. It wasn't that expensive. It's so good. It's really, really good, especially if you want to look at mastering your adult ADHD. The other thing I quickly want to put up before we go into this is there's also the UBC has a free online course on autism and neurodiversity in the workplace that is quite good. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the link to that in the chat room. And if you want to continue your learning on this topic, you can go ahead and honestly go ahead and check out that that course for your own learning. So Annabelle, who has the same last name as me, I don't know if we're related, but go ahead.
Well, it's my married last name, but anyway, we might be. Have you got Welsh connections? My husband is Welsh, so
I think technically somewhere I have Welsh, but nobody that like
okay
is Welsh.
That's okay. So I guess I just wanted to say loved your presentation, and I think one of the things as someone who feels that she did miss her daughter's diagnosis, I did write it in the chat. I think we have to be so careful, especially now with all the knowledge we have, that we remember that some of the physical complications you can get from chronic diseases or conditions, and type 1 diabetic being one of them. Every time it was mentioned about my daughter's agitation, or, you know, in school, hers, you always knew her desk. It was always the one that was the mess. You know, it was always disorganized. And it wasn't until she actually went to Algonquin College, and I've got to give them kudos because she was in Ottawa University as well. And it never really got picked up. And this one lecturer said to her, well, my daughter's a type 1 diabetic, but, you know, I'm marking your paper and you seem to me as though you have some learning issue. You just learn differently. And it was really interesting because after that, she didn't get assessed professionally, but she did get assessed by one of the college people there. And they did say that it looked like she had anxiety, ADHD stuff going on. She, as an adult, has since kind of diagnosed herself and agrees that this is an issue for her. And I'm so glad she's now going to be speaking to her doctor. But I feel badly because, you know, I mean, yes, as a parent, I missed it. But in all fairness, the type 1 diabetic was more of the focus. And I must admit, I let that go. So I think we have to be careful with that. And, you know, I think I'm so grateful that teachers are getting more in tune with these things. But just to be aware, if you do have a child with any chronic condition, it is important not just to dismiss it as, oh, it's part of the condition, because that's what we did, in all fairness. And I think she did it as well. And we really did miss it. So I just would like to say we probably could have saved her a lot of anguish through high school and, you know, socially and, you know, and for her own mental health. I think, you know, it really would have helped her had she known more about ADHD. She has since been in a BST program, knows a lot now, and I think it really opened her eyes. She did, you know, as I said, just wanted to throw that out there. But anyway, and thank you again, wonderful young man. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, absolutely. And neurodiversity can mask as other things. It can be difficult to pin down unless you're specifically kind of often looking for it, right? So again, the field is expanding. Individuals are being, you know, caught at younger ages, not caught, recognized at younger ages. The resources are better. You know, back in the day, it was, what was it called? Teacher's Little Helper was Ritalin, right? Teacher's Little Helper. And they just, oh, that kid's acting up, pop, 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 and they would just toss, you know, stimulants into these kids and turn them into zombies. And that was it. There was no education, no therapy, no interventions. It was just take the pill and honestly, take the pill and shut up. Act correct, you know? So so I mean, I get where you're coming from. You know, and it would be, you know, but from my perspective, you know, I know how you feel about that, but from my perspective, it's like, how long ago was this? The information wasn't there as readily as it is now. But guess what? You caught it, right? And although it could have helped, it gets, you know, she has the rest of her life now to work on that and learn. So, Diane.
Yeah, I'm just curious what your opinion is. How important do you think it is that our clients actually go and have the diagnosis? Like if somebody comes in and says, you know, I have ADHD, or I say to them, have you ever considered that you may have ADHD? Like, I personally don't know that it's that important, but I'd really love to hear your view on that.
So there are a lot of skills that you can work with that help ADHD that aren't sort of ADHD specific. So if you suspect that your client has ADHD, but they're not really interested in getting diagnosed with it, you can still act as if, right? The only thing that probably won't, without a diagnosis, that won't enter into the equation is medication.
Yeah.
Which, depending on the severity of someone's, especially ADHD, you know, won't be a factor in it. So that's the one thing. So there's always that acting as if. The other reason, so there's that, but the other reason why it's really super important to know either way, yes or no, is because if there is the diagnosis, it's not just about the medications, it's about, then you can really specifically get in there and pull out those things and do, you know, sort of a broad overview of neurodiversity. You can then really drill down on what's going to help with ADHD. So I know in BC, there is a fantastic, and disclaimer, I don't work for these people. I'm just telling you that this is a thing that exists. In BC, there is one specific clinic that is on the MSP system, so the provincial system. So if you get a referral, you can wait 6 months and go. But they also offer rapid assessments for $250, and you can jump the line, I guess, and pay this $250 and get assessed online by one of their psychologists who just does that pipeline. So there's two ways, it's in BC at least, there's two ways of going down that avenue. I will just say that it exists. I won't plug them because I don't know if it's appropriate for me to plug another place. So, but if you look up like rapid ADHD assessment and you're in BC, it'll probably come up. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that especially, so to me, I think what you're saying is if they may need medication, or you want to be even more specific to help them, then yes, have them diagnosed officially. But otherwise, like I think I can go on my hunch having it myself and having my daughter and whatnot. But also I think, and I don't know right or wrong, but I think if they have autism spectrum, that would be more important, in my opinion, maybe to have diagnosed. But again, I can go on my hunch there as well. But
and again, without having that diagnosis, you can still do, you know, family systems, narrative, guilt, shame, self-esteem, strength-based, motivational, solution-focused, and then all the self-care stuff, right? You just might not be able to get to those really specific tools that are really helpful, but you can still be helpful.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Nanette.
Hi, yeah, just curious. Have you ever come into contact with someone who has been diagnosed with ADHD, maybe he's tried medication, doesn't like the medication, but then at the same time, they're just absolutely do not want to look at the ADHD, do not want to face it, do not want to learn any skills. And you can see it definitely affecting their life in terms of the depression, the self-esteem, the anxiety, the self-worth. Like, what do you do?
It's and I think most of us might have come up against a situation like this, right? Like, it's, to you, it's glaringly obvious, and you can see all the ways it's impacting the person, and they're just not at all interested in that diagnosis. In fact, they feel like the diagnosis would probably stigmatize them. They even have like adverse feelings to getting that diagnosis. In those particular cases, again, it kind of mirrors what Diane said, which is you can have that conversation, you can give them the information on where to go, and if they want to explore that, that's fine. But then you can just act as if, right? You can bring in those general interventions that are going to help them generally. And dry mouth, sorry. And then hopefully once you start to sort of, and this is what I've also found too, once you get into the therapeutic relationship, and once you start working on things and they can see positive change starting to happen, and they can see that it's coming through learning different skills, or it's coming through the talk therapy, or it's coming through some education that they've taken, I've found that more often than not, the willingness to sort of at least explore the possibility lightens, right? So once you see that, then you can foster that growing willingness to kind of maybe lean into it. Again, you're never, you can't obviously demand someone gets it. You can't harp on it. You can bring it up, and then you can act as if, and hopefully, if they again start building that internal currency and start building that foundation and start feeling really confident about, wow, this therapy is actually really, really helping. Maybe if I looked into that, it could help more, right? That is the the slightly frustrating part about that kind of thing is, like, darn well that there's something there and they don't want to investigate it. You can't force them. You just kind of have to lean in and teach them what you can and help them what you can, and then maybe check in after 6 sessions, check back in on that and be like, so you thought any more about, and just see where they are. I don't know, is that helpful?
Yeah, a bit. Yeah, thank you.
It's a tough one, I know.
It is, right? Like, I have a daughter who has ADHD, and she refuses, like, will not look at it, will not pay attention, wants nothing to do with it. And it's so difficult to just watch her just suffer as a result. So
absolutely. And especially as a mom, not even just as a practitioner, right? As a mom, you're like, that's my kid. You can just honestly just keep that avenue open, and just keep the door open and say, if and when you're ready to look at it, I'm ready. I have the stuff. Like,
yeah, thanks so much, Jeremy.
No problem. I'm going to end that there, because I think everybody wants to go to
there's a little bit of a break in some speed networking, but it'll start in a second. So yeah, if everyone, thank you so much. This has all been recorded. If there's more questions, I'm happy to pass them over to you when we get them, if someone emails them in, but otherwise they can reach out to you directly as well.
I'm also, really quickly, I'm going to put up, I know I didn't put the links for the videos. I'm going to put up my course plan. I'm going to upload it to my vendor's booth, to the session. Yeah. So if you want to come back in like 5-10 minutes, I'll have the links uploaded to the session.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everyone. Great participation. Bye.
Bye.